You know, Netflix, they've had a lot of incredible films that won't make this list today. Marmaduke, Tall Girl, Too Tall, Too Furious, and of course, 365 Days, but there were two of them, so why not? What is up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. Those movies will be on another list, but today we are talking my favorite Netflix films of the year, whether they were bought by Netflix or made by them. Pretty simple. If you're here right now and you want to support this video, dropping a like would be awesome, but please let me know what's a Netflix movie I missed, what is your favorite, and stay tuned because my top 10 movies of the year is coming very soon, and I have to give you some actual legit honorable mentions. The other ones, they were jokes, not really. First up is The Wonder, great performance by Florence Pugh. The Good Nurse, this is one that kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. The Tinder Swindler, solid documentary, fascinating true story. Athena, one of the best looking movies of the year on Netflix. And then The Stranger. You talk about two great lead performances. Oh my goodness, those are some films you have to check out, but here are my favorites. Now, first is the Ryan Reynolds sci-fi vehicle. Is it going to allow him to flex his comedic chops? Is it going to be a little bit more serious? You have Mark Ruffalo in there, Zoe Saldana. So a solid cast. I love the chemistry with the kid who plays the younger version of Ryan Reynolds' character. I liked that premise. Now, I do think they could have explored a few more things in this film to flesh it out more, make it more appealing to certain critics, and I understand some of the complaints, but you talk about just a really fun ride, and Sean Levy's direction, who is going to be taking on the next Deadpool film, so maybe this is a more PG-13 tease of the type of entertainment we're going to get. I do feel like if this movie fleshed Catherine Keener's villainous presence out just a bit more, didn't make that storyline as cheesy, you could have had something really special here. Regardless, it's entertainment, it's fun for the whole family. You get some great gags by Reynolds, but also some great gags by the younger version of this character. So all in all, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. Incantation, a mix between some of these found footage style movies we've seen in the past, and it has that Blair Witch feel, but obviously you're dealing with something totally different here. A character who was cursed after breaking this religious taboo that the movie dives into is kind of facing the consequences of her actions in this movie. She's having to protect her daughter from something, we don't know what, but as the movie progresses, things get creepier, and the film somewhat goes off the rails at the end, I understand. But when you watch this type of movie, especially when it's found footage, and have this eerie, unnerving, horrifying vibe all throughout, and you put yourself in the shoes of this mother, really of the daughter as well, then I think there's something here with this film. Maybe it didn't fully execute, but I just love the style of what Incantation was, and it's one of the more horrifying movies, honestly, I saw all year. White Noise, Noah Baumbach, Adam Driver, a cast of wacky characters. I love everyone in this movie, and the idea of following this family through what feels like this post-apocalyptic adventure, but the movie progresses into something completely different by the end. There are a lot of moving pieces here, as well as a lot of things about the plot that I don't fully understand, right? I'm not familiar with the source material. I was able to sit and watch a Q&A with Noah Baumbach in New York and dive into his mind a bit more as to why he made the decisions that he did. I don't want to talk about it too much because I have a full review coming on this channel, hopefully this week. But all I will say is, I was on board with the madness. Even with the family constantly talking over each other and just the way that they interacted. That is Noah Baumbach 101 as a director. The story, I'm interested to see what you think when I do my review later this week. You get to see my score, all of those things. Right now, it is a recommendation, but it's not going to be for everyone. The Sea Beast, a cross between How to Train Your Dragon and Pirates of the Caribbean. And that's what you're going to see in every single review. It's a very obvious statement to make. That being said, this is a really fun animated movie. This is what I expected to get out of Disney and Pixar this year, right? I'm actually one that kind of defends Lightyear. I had a fun time with it. But other than that, the other films that they've put out this year, animation-wise, just, nope. It really all starts with the cast. You have Zaris Angel Hader as this young girl, Carl Urban, Jared Harris, and the idea of this father-son dynamic, what the sea monster represents, what happens at the end. It's predictable, right? You can see these elements coming, but for a family film on Netflix in the animated space, this is some of the best you're going to get all year, and that's why it's on my list. I get it. I understand. A lot of people, myself included, expected Glass Onion to be higher. I think this is A great film. Super entertaining. The cast is awesome. Obviously, I did not like the first 15 minutes. Before they get to that island, not to spoil things, but I just thought it was choppy and jumbled and it didn't work. Once they get to the island, you get to see this camaraderie, or lack thereof, right? The movie starts to fire on all cylinders, and even though there was one major reveal towards the end that I did see coming, there was also a major plot point that I didn't see coming. I don't think anyone saw that coming, and the performances here, Janelle Monáe, amazing, Catherine Hahn, Dave Bautista, Kate Hudson, Edward Norton, Daniel Craig. We get more out of Blanc's character in this film than we did the first. I still prefer the first. I thought it was just a better overall story, more interesting characters, but this one may be funnier. This one may be just as entertaining. That's why it's on my list. I wanted it to be higher, but it's still, I thought it was really, really fun. Kid Cudi's movie on Netflix, Intergalactic, a very simple story when it comes to the romance. And our main character of Jabari, he meets this new neighbor, doesn't know if he has room in his life for love, and the complicated relationships that come out of this encounter are really interesting. And while I love the dynamics of the characters, and I thought the voice cast was really good, it's the animation. It is, and I said this for a couple of movies this year, Puss in Boots included, that Spider-Verse style of animation, that's going to be the ultimate comparison. That's the benchmark. That's the standard for a film like this. And this works so beautifully on a visual level, right? The story is simple. Maybe it could have been longer. Maybe I could have been even more invested than I was. But this film was a huge surprise, a great experience, and I'm so happy it made my top 10. Apollo 10.5, A Space-Age Child. I went into this like a lot of people, expecting it to be some sort of space adventure, not knowing what Richard Linklater, that's right, a great director, had in store for us. But really what it is, it's a peek into the life of this kid in Houston, Texas in 1969, and everything that went on in the day of a life of a child in that time, or in the day of a life of a family. And we get to explore all of these crazy, what feels like nostalgic things, but I wasn't alive in 1969, but you watch this movie and you're like, I wanted to be alive. Life was so different, but somewhat glorious back then, and the space age was real, and imagining himself in this scenario and the way that that plays out towards the end, it's not going to be what everyone wants with this movie. I get it. But I just thought it worked oh so well. Jack Black, who does the voiceover, this is one of my favorite performances of his. I know it sounds crazy. Watch this movie. It was beautiful. Adam freaking Sandler. Adam freaking Sandler. You make me so mad sometimes, man. I love you. You make me mad, though. Sometimes you'll go and you'll do these movies, and I'm like, there's so much potential there, but I know exactly what Hubie Halloween is going to be, or I know exactly what Jack and Jill. But then Punch Drunk Love. But then Uncut Gems. But then Hustle. And that's right, I'm not saying Hustle's as prestigious of a film, but his performance here, he's so committed to the role because you know how much he loves basketball. We all know this at this point. But he brought an authenticity to this movie that I don't know if non-basketball fans are going to pick up on, right? Because if you don't know the sport, if you don't know the people involved with the sport, and you watch this movie, you're going to be like, who are all of these random non-actors? And, there are obviously times you can tell they're not actors, but for the most part, everyone is playing their role well. I did not love how they shoehorned in the social media aspect of that second act going into the third act. And you know the moment I'm talking about when Bo Cruz kind of goes viral and it gets him from point A to point B. That was a huge plot mishap. But other than that moment, this is a Rocky-style movie that pays off all the way through. I love the story. I love the basketball player who plays Bo Cruz. I love the chemistry between the two main characters. And I love Stanley's story. Stanley Sugarman, one of my favorite characters of the year. Adam Sandler, one of my favorite performances of the year. That's right. It's in my top 3. But is it as good as Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio? Is any Pinocchio movie as good as this Pinocchio movie? I say no. That's an unpopular opinion because, the Disney classic. I think the Disney classic's really good for what it is, but this is so dark and different and tragic in its own way. I loved watching this because I love that people of all ages can watch it and enjoy it. They pick up on the themes that are easy to pick up on, but there are also some moments in there where you sit back and you go, my goodness, we're looking at death, we're looking at loss and tragedy, and this version of Geppetto, this version of Cricket, the best version of these characters that I've seen, the voice performances like Ewan McGregor, and there are so many standouts. The score, my God, the score, and obviously Del Toro's direction, right? I was so moved by this film. The animation is just beautiful, and if you haven't seen Pinocchio, not the crappy Disney version from earlier this year, or the other crappy animated version, or the other crappy live, just watch this one. Or the classic Disney. But of course, my number one, All Quiet on the Western Front. I have to save a lot of my thoughts here for another video coming out later this week. My top 10 movies of the year. It's very obvious this is going to be my top 10. Where's it going to fall? Even I don't know at this point. But I will tell you this. Man, I was sitting in that theater when this movie ended in New York, a Netflix-owned theater, so you have a lot of people there for the premiere. It was a really cool experience. But when the movie ended, no one said a word. I don't think anyone breathed. I'm surprised people didn't start passing out. We all just sat through the credits, and then when the credits ended, there were a couple of people that got up, but people were still sitting, hearing sniffles, and I heard a conversation outside of the theater, two individuals talking, and I believe one of them, it sounded like they were a veteran. He talked about just the authenticity of this movie and what it meant to him, and what seeing events like this, tragic, brutal, I mean, the way this is handled, it's one of the more brutal war films I've ever seen, but the way that was presented to us as an audience, that moved him. Hearing that conversation moved me, but the movie itself, I absolutely love the way it was structured. I get the complaints about cutting back to certain things within the government and some things about the perspective. I don't want to say much more. I need to save my thoughts for my other video this week. Thanks so much for watching this countdown. And again, come back, man. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. We've got more lists and countdowns. My best TV shows of the year. My best movies of the year. My worst movies of the year. And then we look forward to next year, my most anticipated. Lots of lists, but I'm going to be in those comments looking at your lists. Please leave them. Start that conversation. But don't leave me. Come back. I need you. I really do. Seriously, I need you. If you leave me, I'm going to be disappointed in you, but I wouldn't blame you, like I would understand. Okay.